right, but you almost did a 5-4. I'm like,
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I am so good at this.
yeah. We would have had to say, are we recording this? Oh, wait, we forgot to start? How far in did we get?
Well, that's actually an advantage because then we can always claim that, the good parts of the episode just didn't get recorded.
There we go.
or they got left on the cutting room floor. Is that what you're hearing from Vegas,
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yeah. See, we're professionals here, right? That's why we make the big bucks. Wait a minute. Am I hearing that we don't make the big bucks? Exactly. Welcome to Preferred Enemies, the Warhammer 40k podcast. It's getting ready for the Ronadandra. I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
And if you can guess by that, we are going to be talking about the new Codex Aeldari that is now available. Thank you to Games Workshop for providing us with a copy of that to look at and give a fair and unbiased review. But before we get into that, there's going to be a lot to cover because that book is a massive change from the previous index version. So
not just massive change, massive amounts of units.
There's a lot to talk about. So this is going to be split up a little bit weirdly, but before we get into that, we're just going to jump into something that was covered while you guys were at LVO, but you didn't talk about on your episode. And that was the reveal, our LVO preview. And there were some cool things previewed, and there were even some things that were revealed that weren't in like the video reveal, like the new Lord of Poxes for Death Guard, who they had to show because he got leaked. Somebody got sent the sprue by mistake.
Well, I just want that to happen to me once where I get to be the one like that accidentally releases a model. That would be cool.
Right. And they did, and with that, they did show what the roadmap was for the next codexes coming out, and I do appreciate that this is an actual functional roadmap as opposed to stuff. Look, things will be coming. We will make plastic kits. Well, yeah, that's what you do. That's your entire business model. But for now, they have Aeldari, Astra Militarum, and the next thing we're going to be talking about, which is Emperor's Children. Woo. But then after that, coming up next, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Thousand Sons. All the cult legions get their codexes.
I mean,
like 4 in a row.
That's a good thing, putting them all back to back to back, because then you're not like, well, this one's got this, but we're going to wait 6 months for that one. Next year we might get the third one, and so no, all of them here, boom.
It also allows us to consolidate all of our salt into one time period.
Oh.
Does that mean the summer is potentially going to be either really good or really painful?
I mean, it's chaos. We're going to complain regardless.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just how it rolls, right?
But I mean, we thought Eldar were early, and I kept saying Emperor's Children. We talked about would it be fall, would it be summer, and it's now. That was I think the biggest shock I had.
Yeah, I was not prepared for them to be like, oh yeah, this is coming very soon. I was like, okay, they're going to start revealing it and then give us more and trickle out over the next several months. But no, it's happening.
Yeah, I made my prediction that they would show off Lucius, and I was right. But then my prediction, and then they'll show us the rest of the army, was wrong. They were like, they'll wait till Adepticon to show us the army. Like, nope, they just dropped it all. Which means Adepticon will probably get World Eaters and Death Guard previews, or since we already know one of the characters for Death Guard. So
you mean all of them?
Well, yeah, that may be the only thing they get.
I mean, Custode's got a character. That seems to be the thing. Unless you're a brand new army, you're getting a model, pretty much, it feels like.
Or unless doesn't have a lot of a lot of holes in their army at this point. So
yeah. So those are all guaranteed to be coming once Emperor's Children out, which is apparently going to be soon. But then we also have 4 more things shown to be on the horizon, which I'm assuming is we're looking at fall, winter. And We've been able to figure out 3 of them for sure, and the 4th one is unclear what it could represent. But based on it's like these black and white snippets of artwork, there's one that we have identified as Grey Knights. So Grey Knights will be coming. There's one that's been identified very clearly as Black Templars. I mean, it's a guy with a power axe chained to his wrist. That's going to be a Black Templar. Chaos Knights, like their Reaper chainsword is very distinctive. So that one pretty clear. We're getting Chaos Knights sometime later this year. The one that I'm unclear on is the one that is very obviously a salamander, like Flamestorm Gauntlet Aggressor. But what that represents, are we getting a new... Are salamanders getting their own codex release? Or is it a codex supplement?
It would be kind of cool to have a codex supplement for salamanders. Because people are liking them. They're getting more and more into the fluff. And people are like, oh, salamanders are pretty cool. And so I could see that. Also, my other question is, normally Imperial Knights come out with Chaos Knights, so...
It's possible we could get a side-by-side release there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of weird that they basically took Imperial Knights officially off the list. Like, I mean, you're right, it probably is going to be a side-by-side, but they had been teasing Imperial Knights specifically as one of the upcoming releases, and they never mentioned them by name in this reveal. So, very interesting. Salamanders is interesting as well because they're one of the original legions that I feel is kind of the least fleshed out character, like on the table. They have a lot of really good fluff, but they don't have a lot of unique units or upgrades or characters. And I think that giving them a codex supplement release, potentially giving them a Primarch or something, upgrading some characters, potentially gives them some really fun areas to grow into. So I'm excited for that if that is what it is.
I mean, we know Vulcan is a perpetual, so there's no reason why we couldn't have a Vulcan come back as a Primarch.
Yeah, but if he comes out as a Primarch, that means at least 2 to 5 more years till Russ.
I don't know. They have been accelerating the pace recently.
Okay, 10 to 20 more years for Russ.
Are we playing by squat rules now? Like every time we mention it, the clock gets reset. And then there was one more that they did, like they showed after this in the video where it was like this really indistinct silhouette, and I don't think anybody's got a clear idea of what that is. I haven't seen any definitive.
From the message boards I've been on, the only thing I'm hearing is sadness that Votann are like, I guess we're next year.
I think that's actually what that silhouette is. It's 2 Votanns in a trench coat.
They already wear trench coats.
I know, but this is going to be like the Grey Knight model. Dang it! Now the joke's funny if I remember what the name of it is.
What, the Nemesis Dread Knight?
Yes, sorry, the Dread Knight. Yeah, this is going to be the Squat's version of a Nemesis Dread Knight. It's just 2 Votann on each other's shoulders, like shooting guns at each other.
At each other? That doesn't seem to be very useful.
At the enemy. Well, at the enemy.
Oh my gosh, your jokes fell flat today.
That one came up a little bit short.
Oh. I would say well played, but I refuse to reward that. So, so let's talk about the other thing, the big reveal for 40K. And that what? Oh no. The big reveal for Old World is the fact that Cathay is one of the things on the horizon. That one people were able to figure out from artwork. But the Emperor's Children, as we mentioned, is the next upcoming army apparently. And obviously, we already knew Fulgrim was coming. Like, it's no surprise that Emperor's Children is coming. What the surprise is A, how soon it's apparently coming, and B, we finally got to see the other models and some of the aspects of the line. And, we start off like Fulgrim. We've seen Fulgrim. Fulgrim's getting a book to go along with him. So that'll be cool. And then we get to the Lucius the Eternal, which I did say they were going to reveal, and I was not wrong in that. And he's even uglier than his old. Like his face looks horrible. I mean, like in a good way. It's well sculpted. It's just gross,
grotesque.
Yes.
No, I love this model. This is This is right on line with like the other Chaos Lord, named lords that we've gotten models for recently, like Karn and Ahriman, and yeah, just this is a really good representation of what he is.
Yeah. And the fact that like he's actually wielding the Blade of the Lair, which if you've read the Fulgrim book for the Horus Heresy, you know where that came from and what that led to. Like that is the blade that led to the downfall of the Emperor's Children. So they're, and they confirming that it was given to Lucius, which I think is mentioned in one of the novels. But he looks absolutely appropriately grotesque and deadly. So I really like this version of him. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to build him and paint him. Then we've got the new, like, their generic lords. We've got the Lord's Exultant, which looks to have several different weapon options, including a power spear of some sort, power fist, sonic pistol, a whip, a plasma pistol, power sword. So like all the kinds of stuff you would expect a Chaos Lord to be able to wield. I'm not quite as sure on the head design where he's got like the big bone symbol like stretched out of his skull, but that does also seem appropriately Emperor's Children. They're really leaning into like the Cenobite style design on these guys.
Yes.
Well, what I was thinking on the design, it really feels like a mix of Space Marine or Chaos Space Marine and Eldar, in this case, Dark Eldar. So you kind of got a Chaos Space Marine, Dark Eldar fusion, which in my mind kind of makes sense since, Slaanesh is the god of the Eldar. Well, not truly the god of the Eldar, but the Eldar created Slaanesh and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I could see them saying, well, Eldar are perfection, so and that's why I want to eat them all. So here, you guys need to look more Eldar-ish.
Yep. And then we've got our Lord Cacophonist, which is our like noise lord, apparently.
I like him. He looks cool.
Yeah, with the big old doom, looks like a doom siren of some sort on his back.
The giant speakers on his back. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to cause some noise.
Yeah, and then the like dual noise pistols and the little kawaii uwu symbol on his back.
I missed that.
I somebody pointed it out online. I'm like, I can't unsee it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you, I see it.
It will be forever lodged in your brain. You're welcome. We've got the new Noise Marines, which look fantastic. It does. I think they did. I want to say they mentioned on the video that they're on larger bases.
Yeah,
they are on like, and so they're kind of like Havoc equivalents, which makes sense. It's kind of like with the ability to take Blastmasters and such, it's kind of what they were.
And everything is going up in base size. Cry.
Yeah. But yeah, the sonic weapons look fantastic. The kind of whitish green color scheme on the weapons I did not expect, but it looks cool. Like, I think that's the first time they've painted them like that.
The paint jobs on all these models, like from the heavy metal team, look absolutely amazing with, pinks and purples and just all sorts of like really cool colors. So this seems like it'd be a really fun army to paint.
The one person I saw on Blue Sky was saying like, hey, when I first saw these, I felt like, man, some of these models though, like especially like the Lord's Exultant, seem a little desaturated. Like they just didn't really seem like they popped. So they took the pictures and they cranked up like the vibrancy and saturation on it. And they're like, okay, no. But yeah, it's like, are you really playing Emperor's Children if it doesn't make your eyes bleed just a little bit?
Fair.
Yeah. Then we've got the flawless blades, which are apparently like what happened to the Palatine blades after the Legion fell to chaos. Which so on these models, I don't like the heads as much, and maybe I just don't know if I dig the stretched out head thing they've been going for, because they got the same thing that they have in like the Lord Exultant on a couple of the heads here. And I don't like it as much, but that is a personal
just
preference.
Cone heads.
Yeah,
it's a choice.
I do like the guy with like the long flowing hair and the speaker face. Like that one works for me more than the stretchy heads, but I'm assuming there will be multiple options for heads.
Yeah.
And then they have their like basic Marines, which I find interesting in that in like World Eaters and like World Eaters, Thousand Suns, I'm actually meaning Thousand Suns this time, and Death Guard, like the cult Marines are like the bog standard, like this is your battle line force, like your Berserkers, your Plague Marines, your Rubric Marines, like they are your like rank and file Marines. And that's not the case here. The Noise Marines are like your elite heavy weapon Marines. Here we're getting 2 new squads of just like legionary equivalents. We've got one that is melee focused called the Infractors, which are all like blades and pistols. So basically like assault intercessors. Why with the
N-words again? I mean, we've got interceptors, inceptors, incursors, and now infractors.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Meanwhile, if you want guns, they've got the Tormentors. Does not begin with an IN. There you go.
Yay! Guys. That makes me happy.
And so, like, they are your like if you need a gun line, this army can actually take like battle line troops with pistols and looks like whips and things like that for the champion. Which and it looks like they can take plasma guns, and I do like that they're using the more Heresy era plasma guns.
Mm-hmm.
So, which totally makes sense. The designs on everything look consistent with like some of the older like Chaos Marine sides, like the way the backpacks are done with like the little ball mounted vents and everything. Like
I'm getting a lot of like Rogue Trader vibes off a lot of these models, which I really like.
Yeah. Down to like the poses and everything. Like I'm amused that like when they were showing like this photo they have of like 5 of the Tormentors, and you've got like the one with the plasma gun and one with the bolter, and they're clearly based off of the same body because they have the same kind of lean with it pose. So it's like obviously multi-part kit that can make multiple. And in fact, they do specify that the kit that makes the Infractors also makes the Tormentors, because we get into the Champions of Slaanesh army box, which is the debut army set. Same kind of thing we saw with Sisters, that we've seen with like the Cadian when they redid the Cadians for Imperial Guard, when they redid Krieg for the Imperial Guard. Now we're getting an Emperor's Children launch box, which 2 units of Noise Marines, 2 units of 10 Infractors, which can also be built as Tormentors. So you'll probably want to build one of each. Yeah, and then a Lord Exultant, which and also obviously like includes like the special edition codex and the data cards, like all the stuff you would expect from one of these army boxes. And then they do mention the codex. Also, I think the combat patrol has been mentioned. I don't think it's on their website.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on the website because I'm on there right now. But yeah, they did. I do remember they mentioned that there's a combat patrol coming, but. Yeah, I don't think they announced anything beyond that.
Let's see, and because I know Auspex Tactics has a combat patrol video, which looks to be another Lord Exultant, 2 units of 3 Flawless Blades, and then a unit of Infractors or Tormentors. So this would actually be one of those cases where it's like buy the army box and buy the combat patrol, because that'll get you pretty much all the new stuff except for like Lucius and Fulgrim and the Lord Cacophonist.
Nice. I mean, so, like, I do appreciate that they're doing that, of where the combat patrol and the starter box complement each other.
Mm-hmm. No, I do really like that. I am kind of getting bored with the combat patrols that are all infantry. Like where I miss having like a centerpiece model, like vehicle or something. But This does seem, and we'd have to see what like the prices look like on individual boxes of Flawless Blades to determine how good a deal this is. Although again, Auspex Tactics did kind of a breakdown based on like a Lord Exultant based on the price of a Chaos Lord, Flawless Blades based on the cost of 8 bound, or are they going to be more like Inner Circle Champions? They might be a little bit cheaper, and then basing the Infractors or Tormentors based on the cost of like other space, like basic Space Marine units. So if it's based on pricing like that, we know the combat patrols are generally 168 now, somewhere around there, 170. I don't even think they're all necessarily.
Yeah, 168.
Yeah. So if it's 6250 for the 8-bound, 6250 for the Infractors, Tormentors, and
40 for the character.
40 for the character, and that's 6250 for each set of Flawless Blades. So you could basically be getting effectively a free box of Flawless Blades if you buy the Combat Patrol.
Yeah, and that feels about the same value proposition of the other Combat Patrols. So yeah, that would make sense.
It's not a box I would necessarily double up on, but I think like you buy that and the army box, now you've got 3 units of base troops, you've got 2 units of Flawless Blades, you've got 2 units of Noise Marines, you've got 2 Lords that you can attach to probably whatever you want.
Yeah, it feels like a good start.
Yeah. So I imagine, and some of the artwork they show of the like they do like a splash image of like all the units, like a bunch of Emperor's Children fighting Imperial Guard, and they do show rhinos, they show Land Raiders. I see a Helldrake and a Mauler Fiend in the back. Also some Chaos Demonettes and Keepers of Secrets. So they did say that there will be demon datasheets in the Emperor's Children Codex. What that means, we don't know yet. There's been speculation of this could be a Khorne Demonkin style book where they can be taken as part of the same army, or this could be the fracturing of the Chaos Demons Codex into multiple codexes.
Well, they've always said they don't want a model line in 2 different systems. So yeah, just split up demons and put them into the Chaos Legions.
Right.
I don't know that they'll actually do that, but
yeah. So, because we still have like there's a number of like you've got like Be'lakor and stuff like that where it's like where does that fit if it's generic? But again, we haven't seen the book, so we don't know yet. We'll see what form this takes, and if that does inform where we go from here. Also, it does look like I see a winged demon prince in that picture, so we can safely assume that that's an option. So I mean, it looks like it'll be a decently fleshed out army. We'll have to see if this follows the pattern of World Eaters where you may not be able to bring some of the stuff that you've brought before because it's no longer in the codex. But again, without seeing the book, it could speculate.
It could easily also be like a Death Guard situation where you wind up having access to everything, almost everything out of the Chaos Marine book, and you wind up having weird duplicates. So
yeah,
you know, they have a couple different paths they could take. So I'm excited to read through it. I freaking love the models. Like
the models look fantastic.
Yeah, just such cool design.
It's like, why do they have to release this when I'm in the middle of painting an Eldar army for raffle?
I think that's Slaanesh whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to eat all my Aeldari time. Yeah, most likely. So, but yeah, that is coming. That is coming and coming soon. We don't know exactly how soon, but it is listed as the next army that we are getting is Emperor's Children. So, not nearly as long a wait as we first thought.
Yeah.
But before we can look at that, and we don't know how soon is soon, but before we can talk about that, we have something else to talk about, and that is the Aeldari. Yes, we have a copy of Codex Aeldari. Granted, I believe it is officially out on shelves today, or is it next week?
No, this coming Saturday.
Yeah, so it's 2 week pre-order window.
Yes, 2 week pre-order window.
So we did get a copy of this. Sorry, we're coming in a little bit late on the previews, but you guys were in Las Vegas and had a lot to talk about for Las Vegas. So,
and actually, since you mentioned the Eldar that you're painting, I figure this is a good spot to slide this in. Midwest Conquest narrative event will be posted by the time this goes live.
Yes.
We're going to have 16 slots available. We could potentially expand if there's more interest. Dennis and I are really excited after going to the Grand Narrative and LVO Narrative and like to blend in some of those ideas and come up with some really cool stuff. So check the Midwest Conquest website. We'll post it on social medias as well, and let everyone know. But we're really excited with what we've got coming this year.
Yeah,
and I'll say my part of that is the LVO did provide a lot of inspiration. So I'm glad you finally talked me into going, Kev.
Yep.
And I will say, watch those spots to go sooner than later, because I like between the local group that I'm in, where I've been talking up the event, and I know some of our patrons have already, we've kind of let them know ahead of time that, hey, this is coming. And there's already somebody like, yeah, I'm going to bring a group of like 5 people down. And so
that's great.
Those 16 slots could fill up quickly. So we will post that as soon as it's up. So by the time you're hearing this, it should already be up, and we'll have already announced it on like our Blue Sky. But narrative event is a go, and we look forward to seeing you here. As someone who played in last year's, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast. And the final game is like, if it's like last year where it's just like a massive group of everybody against everybody or something akin to that, it should be a lot of fun. So just watch this space for details, but it is coming. So yes. Midwest Conquest Narrative, and you can find out more information about Midwest Conquest at midwestconquest.com. And if you're maybe not looking for a narrative, but you're looking for something that is more competitively based, we do have a GT. If you're looking for Age of Sigmar, there's an Age of Sigmar event. There's we've got Beer Hammer on Friday night. If you're more of a historical player, we have Bolt Action, and
we have a really great Bolt Action tournament.
Yeah, and I think are we going to do a Night Joust as well?
Yes, Night Joust is going to be Saturday night. That should already be posted as well. So
okay,
we're gonna have fun events. It's gonna be a fun weekend.
Yeah. So, and that's Memorial Day weekend, which I know is the same weekend as the Dallas U.S. Open. Thanks GW for that one. Especially, I feel bad for you, Dennis, because you have to choose.
No, I mean, we doing.
I mean, you're
one?
running Midwest Conquest, but it's like there's a U.S. Open right in your backyard. But thank you for choosing Midwest.
And if this goes like we've kind of seen, they tend to spend 2 years in a spot. They were 2 years in Kansas City, now 2 years in Dallas. I'm betting it's going to move again next year to somewhere else. I'm going to guess in the Midwest area, so hopefully someplace travelable.
That said, the setup last year in Dallas was really sweet, so I don't know. I could see them staying there.
Well, they do have the benefit of having the Citadel down there in that,
true,
that
as like a staging area,
yeah. And it looks like there's only 2 opens and then the finals in Atlanta, which surprised me. So Dallas on Memorial Day weekend, Tacoma gets another event on the 17th through the 20th, and then the finals in Atlanta. November 6th through 9th.
My speculation on this is when they started, the golden tickets were from like those GW events and then some other big ones. And now that there's golden tickets like at hundreds of events,
such as Midwest Conquest.
Yes.
I think they're seeing less need to have theirs as they're letting the community kind of grow their own tournament scene. I kind of hope they don't go down to just a grand narrative, but I don't know. I would like to see at least 2 U.S. Opens, kind of, so that, because the U.S. is big, we need these regional type events. I think.
Well, and technically they only did 2 last year because Tampa got canceled. So I mean, like, I do wonder if that kind of factored into it. They're like, well, maybe 2 is the sweet spot from like travel and financial and strain perspective, because Zach and his team go really, really hard at the grand narrative, but they also go pretty hard at those those smaller events too. So there is a limit to how much effort you can put into every event.
Yeah, it's like do you have fewer, more events but with less effort, or do you do a couple of like big showcase events?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that is so yeah, Midwest Conquest, Memorial Day weekend, and if you choose that over the Dallas Open, we'd be very, very grateful. And it'll be a less expensive option than the Dallas event. I can guarantee that. So now time to move on, because like I said, we've got a lot to cover with this book. So we're going to talk about like the fluff and the army rules and possibly some of the detachments in part 1, and then part 2 will be, oh my goodness, they reworked how a lot of the units work and how this all interacts. We may even break in the middle of the detachments, just because there's also a lot of detachments to talk about. This is 2 Tau codexes worth of detachments.
There's only 9.
Well, 9 if you include Grotmus, which I think we should, because now we have the context that, like, when we reviewed the Grotmus one, we're like, well, we don't know, because you shouldn't compare this to the current battle host because the rules may change. We know the rules are changing, so let's see how it fares now with the new rules. So, anyway, Aeldari, if you are new to 40K, you may recognize that there's a number of fantasy analogs in 40K compared to like a generic fantasy, or specifically a Warhammer fantasy environment. So we've had orcs, which are space orcs, and we have the Votann now, which are space dwarves, and we even have had like space undead with like the Necrons and things like that. Well, I should say now, one of the very first things that was in 40K, going back to its Rogue Trader days, was Aeldari, back then known as the Eldar, because that was less copyrightable at the time. Now it is now Aeldari, but space elves. And the history of the Aeldari goes back millions of years. They fought the Necrons during the War in Heaven on the side of the Old Ones. They had a very powerful empire that, flourished for millions of years, extremely long-lived to the point of effectively being immortal. And everything was going great, except for the fact that one of the things about about what?
They got bored.
Well, yes, they got bored. Well, one of the things is the Aeldari are very psychically aware, and part of being psychically aware is also they are very emotionally aware, and they feel everything very deeply. And over time, they started chasing the feelings of perfected sensation. And you might be able to already tell, considering the army we talked about earlier, where this is going. So eventually cults of sensation rose up in the heart of the Aeldari Empire. And entire worlds started basically becoming just hives of pleasure and sensation, and pushing things further and further to the point of murder and torture, just to feel the deepest sensations, cruelty and depravity. Like, these are words straight from the codex. They fell into the trap of hubris. This arrogance blossomed into widespread cruelty, depravity, and excess that would have horrifying repercussions for the entire galaxy. And they kind of then gloss over a little bit what actually happened. And what happened was their psychic nature and the intensity of the emotions that they were feeling and thus feeding into the warp coalesced into Slaanesh. And Slaanesh was born, and this was generally bad for everyone involved. The birth pangs of Slaanesh literally tore real space open and created something we now know as the Eye of Terror, which was also the heart of the Aeldari Empire. At that moment, all Aeldari within the Eye, and to an extent beyond it, immediately died as their souls were ripped away from their bodies and fed directly into Slaanesh and fueled their growth. Now, fortunately, not all the Aeldari were on board with these cults, and several groups of them basically decided, we've tried warning you that this is a bad idea. You aren't listening to us. So we are going to build giant fleets of ships, and we're going to leave. We're getting out of here. This is bad. This is going to be really bad. And those that left on these crafted worlds, now known as the Craftworlds, in some cases they are actually like consolidations of those ships merged into single worlds, which we saw with the Craftworld Biltan when it was split. It broke apart into its component ships. They became known as the Asuryani, and they are what most people think of when they think Aeldari. Now, not all of them are the Asriani. There's also the group that follows the laughing god Kegorok, who are the Harlequins. They are the performers and storytellers of Aeldari culture, and they ran away into the webway. Also, their god is the only one that didn't die when Slaanesh was born, because the Aeldari gods were real. Most of them were eaten. One of them was captured by Nurgle, and that would be Isha, their goddess of healing. And one of them stood up to fight Slaanesh and mostly lost. And that would be Cain, the bloody-handed god of warfare. And he was split into many, many fragments. And some of those fragments ended up on the Craftworlds and were sculpted into statues of Cain, which we'll come back later to. And so in the end, you've got the Harlequins in the webway keeping the history and the story of the Eldar alive. You've got the Aeldari on the Craftworlds, who are basically a dying race who are trying to stop the forces of chaos. There's also like the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, which are not part of this book other than a tiny little bit, which we'll get to. And they're the ones who are like the remnants of those murder and pleasure cults, and they also ran off into the webway, although their souls are slowly being leached away by Slaanesh even when they're hiding. So they try to fill the hole with more torture and pain, which kind of a endless cycle there. Whereas the Eldar figured, if we take these magic stones and we wear them, then we can make our souls go into those, and Slaanesh can't have them. And so that's where soul stones, which we'll see on every Eldar model, and we'll learn to hate painting.
And then the other thing is, as those Eldar die, the soul stones are collected, kind of like Space Marines go after trying to collect the gene seeds. Mm-hmm. And then they get returned to the Infinity Circuit, which is in the middle of each craft world. So that's kind of like their air quote heaven in a way.
Yeah.
The Infinity Circuit is all the souls of the dead Eldar, which at times they can coax some souls to come out and get put into their Wraith constructs to kind of fight as, I'll say, like Space Marine dreadnoughts in a way, because you've got a dead being, a soul, piloting an automaton. So
right. Yeah, it's like this. Welcome to Eldar heaven. Don't get attached. But also there was a prophecy that when every Eldar soul was collected and put into the collective infinity circuits of the craft world, that eventually the Aeldari god of death, Inead, would rise up and be able to defeat Slaanesh with the power of all the dead Eldar. Undrad Ulthwan, the Farseer of the Craftworld Ulthway, decided to speedrun that a bit and performed a ritual that was interrupted by the Death Watch. Thanks, guys. But it did lead to Inead awakening, not at full power, but Inead basically was able to empower a champion, someone who had gone from the Aeldari path to the path of the Corsair, which is another sub-faction of Aeldari who are just space pirates, and through the path of the Drukhari. She died in the gladiatorial pits of Camorra, and then Inead empowered her and rose her back to life. And so that is why, and so now she has led a sub-faction drawing from all these different Aeldari groups, and now there's a group collectively known as the Inari, who are the followers of this god of death.
The cult of the dead.
Yes. So there's the history of the Eldar is long and painful and has a lot of death, a little bit of resurrection, and is coming to an end eventually, which they refer to as the Ranadandra, which would be akin to like a Ragnarok or an Armageddon, an apocalypse, something like that.
And that's when all the Phoenix Lords show up.
Yes.
Know what? Maybe that's why they left Karandras out, because that way we can't have it yet.
No Ranadandra for you. Yes, the Inari still believe that when every last Aeldari dies, that will finally fully awaken Inead, who Inead does have an avatar, And as has been pointed out, Aenead's avatar kind of looks a bit Slaanesh-y, but it also makes sense because Slaanesh was born from the souls of Aeldari, so
Yeah.
And so is Aenead, so they kind of flip sides of a similar
brothers,
coin,
so to speak.
So to speak. And they're like, we could get into like all the various different craft worlds which have their own subcultures. Like there's Ulthway, which patrols around the outskirts of the Eye of Terror. There's Alaitok, which is what's that?
Samhain,
which is the Wild Rider bikers. Bieltan, which is known for the sword wind and having the most focus on aspect warriors, which are Aeldari who have devoted themselves solely to one aspect of combat to the point of getting lost in it. Aeldari have a really bad habit of getting lost in things, which is what happened with the with the fall of the Aeldari in the first place. So
hyperfixation.
They have to like learn to switch paths from time to time, and aspect warriors are like, no, we're just going to stay on this path of this one aspect of combat, and we will be the best at it. Sometimes like that path
striving for perfection, right?
Yes. Yeah. Nothing bad can come of that, as we've determined.
A little of this is good, but what if I went full into it?
No. You've got a Yandon, which is known for having been rocked so many times by like Tyranids and other forces that they have the lowest population and thus have the most use of those wraith constructs. Like, all we've got is our dead people. We got to use the dead people. Get back in the robot, Shinji.
What is it with GW and Yellow factions like having like just tragic histories and dying all the time? Because they did that to the Lamenters as well.
Wait, so what about your Necrons that are yellow? Do they have a tragic history?
Oh, the Necrons have an extremely tragic history.
My Necrons have an extreme... No, they have an extremely tragic history as well because they're sitting on a shelf and haven't been touched in a couple of years.
But yes, I think this kind of gets us through like the short form of Eldar background. There's a lot of stuff to go through here.
I mean, one of the nice things I saw in the book is I like how they spelled out the gods more than they had in previous ones. So you can kind of get a feel of who all they are worshiping, who worships each one, and just kind of like a brief paragraph about them.
Mm-hmm. And lots of detail on the individual aspect shrines, a little bit more information on like where the leaders of the Aeldari come from, where their troopers come from. Like, if you think the Imperial Guard brings in a lot of members of the Imperial Society, everyone in the Eldar world, it can be called up as a guardian. Like, you're a baker? No, here's a splint, or here's a shuriken rifle. You're fighting now. Thank you.
Yep, and if you do good at that, you can graduate to an aspect warrior and you can get a fusion pistol.
Melt-a-gun.
Yes.
Melt-a-gun.
They even have like what they call like the outcasts, which are like their rangers and shroud runners, which are Eldar that leave the Craftworlds to go basically learn to be scouts, and will come back with the knowledge they've gathered. So kind of like how like Space Marines get sent out to like the Death Watch or something like that. Rangers are sent out as like, you are now part of on another path, and then you will come back and share your knowledge with us. Although sometimes they even fall deeply into that path, which is like when you end up with people like Nightspear, the best ever like Pathfinder, also not appearing in this book.
Yeah.
He's mentioned in the fluff path. He got so lost they can't find him.
Yes. We do get a small section of we get a sidebar on the Exodites, which are the Aeldari who were colonizing worlds far from the Eye of Terror and have been completely set apart from the rest of Eldari society, and have we don't have all the technology they do, but what we have, dinosaurs.
Yeah, space wood elves riding dinosaurs. What's not to love? As soon as they add those back in, because they were in the second edition codex, they add those back into Eldar, I will absolutely play Eldar.
So GW, remember how I kept on saying about like if you brought the squats back, I'd play them? Kevin's saying that about the Exodites, so come on, you know what to do.
Just don't do it for a little while, because I got a Krieg army I got to build.
Now, whose fault is that?
I mean,
GW's
also
mostly.
GWs? Yes.
Yes.
Also GWs?
So yeah, we get a little bit on the Harlequins and how they have turned combat into performance, or is it performance into combat? Could go either way. And a little bit on the Aeldari, the Corsairs, who do not get covered a lot. I mean, there's a couple of units of Corsairs in this book. They are hardly anything you can base an entire army around at this point.
No,
but
they used to have a huge Forge World presence and armies you could just run from the Forge World books. But now that more has gotten moved into the GW line, and then with the Corsair boxes coming from Kill Team, they're still around. But like you said, Rob, they don't have HQs. They're just additional things you can throw in for flavor, but not a whole army.
Right. And they do mention like the High Admiral of the Eldritch Raiders, Prince Iriel of Yandon, also not appearing in this book outside the fluff section. Why? Because he's in Finecast. So there's the fluff section. Whew. There's a lot of history there. Millions of years, in fact. But let's talk into how this army plays. Now, when 10th edition dropped,
Fate dice, yeah!
everyone, like Aeldari, were horribly broken. And part of that was due to their army mechanic, which was Fate dice, which was, hey, before the game, roll a bunch of 12, roll 12 six-sided dice, set those dice aside, you can use them whenever you need to in place of another roll. This had numerous problems. There were ways to fix those dice to become sixes. Sixes could trigger devastating wounds. They had a lot of access to devastating wounds. Also, their index detachment gave them free rerolls on hits and wounds. They were fast. They could do a lot of damage.
Fast,
and
mobile,
they were
deadly.
they were also undercosted, and they were generally very unfun to play against. It took some doing, but Games Workshop over time whittled that down. They cut the number of Fate dice you had in half. They raised a lot of points costs. They changed the rules on devastating wounds so that devastating wounds don't spill over the way other mortal wounds do. They had to change fundamental rules of the game to get Aeldari to not be broken. And Aeldari is currently sitting, I think, at about like a 47-48% win rate, which is a huge improvement of like the 75% they had at the launch of the edition.
Very high.
Yeah. So yeah, we've seen what they think of dice fixing in general as sisters have gotten broken, and not broken in the they're too powerful to play against. Broken is in they took them and broke them the way Bane broke Batman's back.
Well, to be fair, they had said about right before the time they said they were going to be nerfing Miracle Dice, they also said, don't get used to your Fate Dice, Eldar. We're going to give you a new army rule.
Yeah. Yes. And so they did. And we knew going into this what it was going to be called. It was called Battle Focus, which is a callback to, I think, their like 6th and 7th edition rule.
Yeah.
Where they could basically like advance and charge or fall back and charge. They had movement tricks.
Yes.
That is still the case. However, the movement tricks are far more complicated this time around.
Yes and no. They're more versatile, I'll say it that way.
They are more versatile. I would also say they are effectively a second stratagem system.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, if your army faction is Asuryani, which you can include Harlequins, and but you can't. But they don't have the Asuryani faction keyword, and you cannot select Harlequins or Inari as your army faction. And in fact, Inari can only be used as your army faction in one detachment in this book. And I think the same for Harlequins. But you can have Harlequins in your army. But if your army faction is Asuryani, then at the start of the battle round, every battle round, you get a number of battle focus tokens. For a 2,000 point game, it's 4. It goes 2, 4, 6, whether you're playing 1, 2, or 3,000 points. Those battle focus tokens can be spent to do one of 6 effects, which are generally, except for one of them, limited to once per turn, or once per phase, I guess. Once per phase. So much like stratagems are. So it's a separate pool of points that you spend to do something akin to stratagems. So your 6 abilities. You have Swift as the Wind. Whenever a unit is selected to make a normal, advance, or fall back move, you can spend a battle focus token to add 2 to their move characteristic. And this is the one you can do for multiple units in the same phase, assuming you don't do it to the same unit twice.
Well, you can't do the same unit twice.
Right.
But and Eldar are already really fast, normally going 7-8 inches. So this is going to make them even faster getting across the board.
Yes. Next, Flitting Shadows. Whenever one of your units makes a normal, advance, fall back, set up on the battlefield, or charged, you can spend a token, and until the end of the turn, they cannot be overwatched.
I love this one.
I know you love this one. Like, this is your jam.
Yeah, here's the catch, though. A unit cannot have 2 put on them on the same phase. You can't do the Swift as the Wind and Flitting Shadows. You can't get extra movement and no Overwatch. So just be aware of that.
You could do them in 2 different phases.
You
can
do
get
them in
Swift
2
at the Wind
different
and then charge and not get Overwatched when you charge.
Correct, unless somebody knows, well, you moved them, I'm going to shoot them now, which would be the smart thing to do.
Right. Then you've also got Star Engines, no longer an upgrade for vehicles. It's a battle focus ability, which are known as Agile Maneuvers. And I say maneuvers because it has an O in it, because it's British. But when a vehicle from your army is selected to make a normal move, you can add D6 plus 1 to its movement.
And note that's only a normal move as opposed to Swift as the Wind, which is normal, advance, or fallback. So.
Right. But it does effectively give you the ability of an advance without having counting as advancing. So that might be important. Sudden Strike. When you are selected to fight, until the end of the phase, you can make a pile-in or consolidation move of 6 inches instead of 3.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's an ability we're seeing on a lot of armies as stratagem, so not surprising to see that here. And again, all these are movement-based, so it makes sense. Opportunity Seized. When an enemy ends a fallback move, you pick a non-Titanic unit from your army, so no Wraith Knights, that started the phase with an engagement range. They can make a move of up to D6 plus 1.
I think this is okay. I would have rather it said you can end in engagement range of the thing that ran away from you.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, otherwise it does set you up for a heroic intervention.
I guess that's true.
Like, I can see cases where that could be useful, but it's definitely more of a niche thing. And then finally, Fade Back. In opponent shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has shot, pick a non-Titanic unit from your army that was hit by one of those attacks, and they get to make a normal move of up to D6 plus 1.
I mean, I'm good with this one.
It's okay. It's just one of the things about Aeldari is you are a fragile army, so you probably lost models in that case. So.
Oh, you definitely did, yeah. But it's a positioning thing saying, hey, am I moving closer to you? Or, hey, can I move into cover for now? Or get out of line of sight completely? So it definitely is a defensive move. And the other thing I like about all these is you get all your battle focus points back every battle round.
Yes, this is not a pool that you have at the beginning of the game and they're done. It's battle round by battle round. So a Fade Back, another one where I could see that is that might make an opponent think twice if they're like to shoot a unit from your army that is near but not on an objective.
True. Because this is not limited to you have to move towards the nearest unit. You don't have to move towards the nearest. You get full say of where you're going. So yeah, that would be a good way to you shoot me. Oh, now I'm on the objective. Thank you.
Yeah, and now on my command phase, boom, I score. So there are ways you can use these. I think a canny player can use these very effectively and do some really neat things with this. It is more bookkeeping. It is like you're going to need a cheat sheet for this for a while, I imagine. But it is a powerful set of movement abilities, and this really cements the idea that Aeldari are the fast army. Like, I think this effectively gives them the best mobility in the game.
I'm going to say yeah, but I don't know. World Eaters seem like they can rush across the board and advance and charge really easily, though. Still.
World Eaters have a lot of very similar abilities. Like the Swift as the Wind to like add 2 to movement is just a thing that I can get for the entire army at any time. So yeah, there's more flexibility here, but I think this definitely puts them in the upper tier of movement.
Yes, I'll agree with that one.
So we're going to get through like the first 4 detachments, and then we'll break, and then we'll cover the next 5 if we include the Armored Warhost.
We should include the Armored Warhost.
Yes, and then the unit changes, which there are quite a few, so we'll save that for part 2. Getting into the Warhost, which would be the closest thing to the Index detachment, sort of. It functions differently, though. Don't think that it's... Because rerolls, like the mass rerolls, those got shunted into something else that is far more targeted.
Yeah, think of this as more your generic, if you don't know what you want to play detachment, play this one. It's kind of well crafted, well balanced. It's not probably the strongest, but it's very useful.
Yeah, you won't feel bad taking this one. So the detachment rule is Martial Grace. You get an extra battle focus token each battle round, so you're looking at 5 instead of 4 for a 2,000 point game. Every time you perform Swift as the Wind, you get 3 inches of movement instead of 2. And every time you use one where you roll a d6, add 1 to the result. So you're looking at d6 plus 2 on all of those. So
I mean,
more
in a
mobility,
game of
more
inches.
often. Yes. Yeah, this one is like just plays into like, what is the army rule? We're going to make the army rule even stronger. So you've got enhancements, the Phoenix Gem, which lets you bring a model back from death with
that's
on a
always
2-up with full wounds. Like, yeah, that one is just solid. Timeless Strategist, which gives you an extra battle focus token if the bearer is on the battlefield or in a transport.
Yeah. I mean, that's solid if you're really going to lean into the battle focus tokens.
Yes. Gift of Foresight gives you a once per battle round, that unit can get a free reroll.
Useful.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't specify that they can use the reroll even if somebody else has used the reroll, so be aware of that.
True, but still having a 0 CP is helpful.
Right. And given who you can attach autarchs and other leaders to now, that could actually be really useful. And then finally, Psychic Destroyer for Psychers only. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of Psychic ranged weapons equipped by the bearer. It's fine. It's the weakest of the 3.
Good. It definitely is the weakest of the 3, but if you do go all in on like having a psychic unit there, when we get into the unit things, this could be, I don't want to say devastating, but it could do some damage.
Could do some damage, but it's of the 4, it's the one I would look at the least in general. Right. You've got strats for lightning fast reactions. Whenever somebody shoots or fights you, you can target a unit that's not a Wraith construct, and they're -1 to be hit just because they're so fast.
I mean, this is from the old Index detachment. I'm thrilled it's still here because that's a great defensive ability. It's like, oh, you want to hit me? -1.
Yeah, that's always handy. Skyborn Sanctuary, at the end of the fight phase, if you're within range of a transport, within 6 inches of a transport, get right back in it.
Yeah, this is one I've seen like some people like trying things out. This seems to be a favored tactic of keeping your guys by the transport. So in that way, because like you said, Rob, Eldar are fragile. So
yes,
being able to pop a unit back into a transport, that extra layer of protection is huge.
Yes. Feigned Retreat, you can fall back and then still shoot or declare a charge.
This is one of my favorites. I love fall back and shoot, fall back and charge ones.
Blitzing Firepower. In your shooting phase, range weapons get sustained hits 1 if you're shooting at somebody within 12. If they already have sustained hits 1, then you crit on 5s.
I mean, this one's okay. I like it, but that within 12's the rough part of it.
Right. And yeah, like a lot of this army has an interesting mix of like really long range weaponry and then some very short range weaponry. And
yeah.
So this is assuming you're going to get up close and personal with people, which you probably will.
Then. Oh yeah, because they're going to try and come up to you.
Yeah. Fire and Fade just after one of your infantry units. I do like that they, excluding aircraft, because there are aircraft infantry apparently. Just after an Asuryani infantry unit from your army, excluding aircraft, Osserman, and Wraith Construct units has shot. They get to move D6+1, can't declare a charge. Classic Fire and Fade, pop out of cover, shoot, pop back into cover.
Right, and the reason why Asserman's not allowed to do this is this rule, I'm spoiling it, is built into his datasheet. So they don't want you to use his datasheet and this because, dang, moving 2d6+2 would be broken.
Now, would you be able to combine that with Swift as the Wind? Because Swift of the Wind says when you make a normal move, and this specifies it is a normal move. So
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, so you could move D6
4.
plus 2 plus 4. D6 plus 6.
How do you get the D6+6?
Or no, it's not an agile maneuver, so you wouldn't add 1 to the die roll. There we go. So D6 plus 1 plus 3 more. So yeah, D6 plus 4.
Correct.
Still, that's pretty solid. I mean, you're definitely moving, you're going to move probably 6-7 inches, which is going to be your normal movement in many cases. And then Webway Tunnel, take an infantry unit that's within 9 inches of a battlefield edge, put it into strategic reserves.
This is a great way to kind of handle all those other objective things like, oh, go stand in the corner, do this. Oh, we need table quarters. Oh, you go over here, do this. So it's helping score extra points.
Yeah, and this is already an army that's not going to have too much trouble scoring those kinds of objectives because just all the mobility you already have, this just makes you better at it.
So all in all, standard detachment.
Yeah, good standard detachment. Now, if you want to talk about mobility, though, let's move to the next detachment, the Windrider Host.
Yeah, this is the one that kind of... I started 40K in when I got back into it with Aeldari jet bikes because I liked going fast. So here's my detachment, guys.
Yes, very much so. So when you in the declare battle formation step, you can set up... mounted and Viper units, so mounted would be like all your jet bikes, from your army in reserves. During the battle, such units can be set up on the battlefield as if they were arriving from strategic reserves, which means they don't count as being strategic reserves. So I guess they don't count against the limit that strategic reserves would have. I don't know.
I hate thinking through all those rules. They just...
Yeah. And then for the purposes of setting them up, they treat the current battle round number as being 1 higher, which means they can come in on turn 1. So you can null deploy your bikes.
Yes, I do really like that part. Unless your whole army's bikes, because I think you still are limited. Half your points have to be on the board, I believe.
Yeah. And then at the end of your opponent's turn, you select a number of Asuryani mounted or Viper units from your army that are not in engagement range. Doesn't say where they have to be, just anywhere on the table. Put them into reserves. And it can be up to 2 in a 2,000. Basically, it's 1 per 1,000 points in the game.
That's super useful because the bikes already go fast, but the ability to pick them up where they're probably not in a good spot and redeploy them, I like it.
Yeah. Again, you need somebody in a table. You need to take table quarters. You will take table quarters. You will have it. You will be in every table quarter. At the end of my opponent's turn, if I'm not in a table quarter, I will be in a table quarter. And also, your Windrider units get battle line.
That's the biggest thing for this one because when I first started, like I said, I played jet bikes. Jet bikes were a troop choice back in the day, and then they moved them out to fast, and I was sad. So giving them battle line means now I can take 6 units of them again, and it'll feel like the old days. I can have my jet bike army.
Now, I will say the upgrades here, the enhancements, are all for like pretty much mounted characters, and you've only got 2 options, Farseers and Warlocks.
Yep, because here's our spoiler. The Skyrunner is not in the book for the Autarch, so...
Nope, because also a Finecast model. So but they've left it open-ended, so theoretically they could make a new Autarch Skyrunner model if they wanted to, because one of the enhancements does specify mounted Psyker, which would right now is redundant, but it might not be in the future. So you've got First Drawn Blade, you get Scouts 9 inches.
Handy.
Mirage Field, every time you're attacked, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Always good. That one. I think that one's almost a must-have. Seer Sight Strike, psychic weapons equipped by the bearer. This is the psyker only one. Psychic weapons have anti-monster, anti-vehicle 2 up.
I mean, I want to poo-poo this one, but you don't have a lot of huge anti-monster vehicles because you're a lot of strengths 5 and 6s on the jet bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So having something, even if it's just, and you could take it on the warlocks, so you could have them do their smite and make that anti-monster vehicle. So it can be useful, but like the psychic one and the previous one, it's probably lower on your list.
Right. And then finally, Echoes of Ultanesh. In your command phase, roll a d6, add 1 if the bear's not in your deployment zone, add an additional 1 if the bear's within your opponent's deployment zone, and on a 5-up, you gain a CP.
So 5-up, 4-up, 3-up.
3-up, yeah.
I mean, it could
I think Seer Sight Strike's better than this one.
I know. I'll agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss the days of just getting a command point.
Yes. You've got strats Death from on high. In your shooting phase or fight phase, you pick a unit that was set up from reserves and had. So this ties really nicely into that Ride the Wind ability. And every time they attack, they can reroll the wound roll.
And from my time in Vegas, having Repentia where I could reroll all hits and all wounds, being able to just reroll your entire unit's wound roll, that's huge.
Yes. Overflight. In your shooting or fight phase, after you've destroyed an enemy unit, you can make a move of up to 7 inches.
I like this one, but it's so situational. You have to, I mean, but it would be a good, like, oh, I see that guy, I'll shoot him. Now I can move 7 more inches to get to an objective. That'd be about the only time I could see it useful, maybe.
Yeah, and it is specifically a mounted unit, so no Vipers, but it would affect Shining Spears. That's where, that one could be useful. That's one thing to consider. Like, you've got the Wind Rider jet bikes, but this would also apply to Shroud Runners and Shining Spears.
Yeah, and it does say fight phase. So if Shining Spears killed somebody at the end of the fight phase, you could have them move. Actually, after they just destroyed an enemy unit, so you could move and technically, I guess, consolidate.
Yeah, because it's just after they've destroyed it. So
right,
theoretically.
7 inches, fleet of things, 6-inch consolidate.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Wind of Blades. In your movement phase, select a mounted or Viper unit hasn't moved yet. They can shoot and charge after they advanced or fell back. So
yeah.
Again,
decent.
just very solid. Yeah. Daring Riders. In the reinforcement step, you pick a unit that's in reserve. Instead of setting them up on like table edges, you can just deep strike them. Right. And it's a 3-inch deep strike.
It'll get changed to 6 because of the FAQ, but still, that's a great way. And you just came in from reserves. You could death from on high. Then I mean,
they do specify you can't charge if you end up within 9 inches of somebody.
If I'm just going to shoot you with a lot of lasers, I don't need to charge you.
But yeah, being able to just deep strike them in anywhere.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. Focused firepower in your shooting phase. Select a mounted or Viper unit. Improve their AP by 1. It's fine.
I love it. I like it. Because the shuriken cannons are AP -1. And AP -2, in my opinion, is that sweet spot. Fair. So being able to do this to get them the AP -2... I mean, I would not use it on the scatter lasers probably because, I mean, it still could be useful because they're AP 0, dropping an AP -1 can help some, but definitely on the cannons, getting a -2 because Space Marines are now at 5s, Terminators are at 4s, which is going to be their invone anyway.
True. So. And then spiraling evasion, you jink 4-up invulnerable save.
These are just cool stratagems. I mean,
these are all very, very solid.
Cool detachment, good stratagems. No notes, maybe, other than maybe give me an autark.
Yeah. Which, again, I do like they kind of future-proofed it so they could put an autark on a bike later and let you use enhancements on them. All right, now we're going to move from bikes to Wraith constructs as we move to the
from
Spirit
fast to slow.
Conclave. Yeah, fast to very slow for this army. Because one other thing is your Wraith constructs don't generally have the battle focus ability, although this does give you a way around it. Shepherds of the Dead, each time an Asuryani Psyker model from your army is destroyed by an enemy unit, that enemy unit gains a Vengeful Dead token. If you are a Votann player,
token?
you will recognize this. Your Wraith constructs have judged them. Add
Because
1 to the hit and wound rolls.
Yeah. So, I mean, that your Psykers die. Oh, you judge people for killing your Psykers. It is so Votann, and they move a lot like Votann too, because they're very slow.
Yes.
So it's like, hey, you like Votann? Here's your Aeldari equivalent.
Yes. And then your Asuryani Psykers all gain a 12-inch aura of, while Wraith Blades, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lords are within 12 inches of you, they gain battle focus. So you can set up bubbles of battle focus.
I really like that because back in the old editions, you had to have a spear or a psyker close by to have them like shoot better and do things. So this kind of harkens back to that, where you have to have the psyker by kind of guiding them to kind of give them the orders to say, hey, yeah, you can battle focus move. Yeah, you can move your extra 2 inches or stuff like that. So I do like how fluffy this is playing out.
Yeah. And one of the reasons for that is, besides the fact that the Wraith construct bodies are big and a bit slower, they're not natural Aeldari bodies, it's always been suggested that the perception that the souls in Wraith constructs have is kind of hazy and incomplete.
Yeah.
So they need someone to kind of guide them towards their targets.
And also, the Wraith Bone is very psychically attuned material, so a Psyker can kind of buff it, so to speak.
Yes. Also, in this detachment, your Wraith Blades and Wraith Guards are battle line.
Which also very needed because this is a Wraith-focused one, but also harkens back to the Eandon supplement, if you guys remember that from ages ago, where that was the one time you treated your Wraith Guard, because that was the only thing at the time, as troops. So, yeah. So now Wraith Blades and Guards are battle lines. So you can take 6 of them, which is great. But if you do, I mean, those 12 units would probably be more than 2,000 points. So, flavor.
Yeah.
Adjust.
Your enhancements are all Spirit Seer only. So it's like they want you to take multiple Spirit Seers. Go fig. Light of Clarity, in your command phase, select a Wraith Construct unit within 12 inches. At the start of your next command phase, add 1 to its OC if it's infantry, 3 to its OC if it's a monster, which would be Wraith Lords and Wraith Knights, I believe.
Yes. I mean, decent. I mean, if you're... and I've seen games come down to what's your OC on that point. Yes. So I poo-poo it a little bit, but it will be useful.
Stave of Kurnos, in your command phase, select a friendly Wraith Construct non-Titanic within 12 inches. Until the start of the next command phase, every time they do a critical wound, the attack becomes precision.
I'm not a fan of anything that on a critical hit or critical wound, it gets precision type thing, because it's not reliable.
Yeah, you can't bank on it.
Yeah.
Rune of Mists, in your command phase, select a Wraith Construct. There's a pattern here. Select a Wraith Construct within 12 inches. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a ranged attack targets that unit, unless they're within 18 inches, the models in that unit have cover.
I don't really like... I mean, I appreciate it. Stealth would have been better because there's so much in the game that ignores cover.
Yeah. And then Higher Duty, once per turn, when an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move within 9 inches of the bear's unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. I think this one's pretty solid, especially when you've got a slow army like Wraith Constructs.
I'm not as fond of this one for a reason. Well, I guess I'll say it now. Spirit Seers don't join units.
That's right. So it's just this. So this would just be the get away from me, get away from me, get away from me.
Yes, this is purely a get away from me, because the spoiler thing is they don't join units, but they gain lone op if they're by Wraith constructs. So if you do get close enough, I guess, I mean, if you're within 9, I can move 6 that could get me out of charge range. So I could still get shot at that range, but at least I'd be out of charge range. So it could be useful for trying to keep a Spirit Seer alive, but if they're that close to you anyway, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, that does seem like a little bit of a weird choice to have them have lone op, but not be able to even join a unit of like Wraithblades or Wraithguard. That seems like a slight oversight, but like I understand wanting to have lone op if they're near a Wraith Lord or a Wraith Knight. I'm totally fine with that, but
I think the way they're kind of representing it is it's the Spirit Seers aren't actually part of the unit because they're not a Wraith, so they're just guiding it while they're close by.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's the Tech Priest, Tech Marine thing where they're just kind of nearby to hit it with a wrench and, tighten up a few bolts when they come loose and then run off to the other unit.
Yeah. All right, and then our strats, Seer's Eye, and you're shooting your fight phase, select a Psyker and a Wraith Construct within 12 inches of it. They haven't shot or fought yet. Then select a unit the Psyker can see, and the Wraith Construct can ignore any or all modifiers to the armor penetration or damage for that attack. That seems very convoluted for a limited situation because there's not all that many units necessarily that affect the AP or damage of an attack.
Deathwing Knights.
Wraithbone Armor. Just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, if they targeted a non-Titanic Wraith construct, subtract 1 from... I just say that, and now here's the damage reduction ability, of course. But reduce the incoming damage by 1.
Which, this is nice, but it's still kind of sad, because like Wraith Lords and then the Wraith Knights used to have this built in. It is nice, though, that the Wraith Guard and Blades get it, though.
Yeah. Blades from Beyond, select a Wraith Blade, Wraith Lord, or Wraith Knight unit from in the fight phase. They gain their melee weapons all have devastating wounds. That one's solid.
This could be useful, but it's still fishing for sixes.
Soul Bridge, select a Wraith Blade, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord unit, and an Osiriani Psyker from your army. Until the start of the next turn, they are considered to be within 12 inches of that Psyker for the purposes of Psychic Guidance and Spirit Guides.
So, decent.
So it lets you kind of stretch that bubble wherever you need it.
Yes, I like that.
Spirit Token, at the start of your movement phase, select an objective marker you control that's within range of a Wraithblade or Wraithguard unit. It is sticky.
Yep. Which
could combine nicely with that Light of Clarity, because that would set what the objective control is on the level of control on that objective.
True. That
and
is
make it harder
higher
to take
than normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Crushing Strides, in your charge phase, just after a Wraithblade, Wraithlord, or Wraith Knight unit ends a charge move, roll a d6 for each Wraithblade model, or 4d6 if it's a Wraithlord, or 6d6 if it's a Wraith Knight, and for every 3 up, the enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. That's
tank
just
shock.
Always good. Yeah, it's tank shock. That's just good.
So, I mean, all in all, this just feels like a solid detachment. I don't think it's awesome, but I think it would be fun, especially, and it leans into the Wraith stuff and the Wraith and Psyker interactions. So, I mean, it's a solid detachment. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not hyper competitive, but fluffy and has some tools to get the job done.
Yes.
And then our last one we're going to cover in part 1. Part 2, we start getting into more specialized stuff, I would say. These are still kind of like general, like, here's the vehicle, or like, here's the generic one, here's the bike one, here's the Wraith one, here's the Guardian one. The Guardian Battle Host. Each time a Dire Avenger, Guardian, support weapon, or Warwalker model from your army makes an attack, if the target's within range of an objective marker, add 1 to the hit roll.
I mean, that's solid. You're going to fight for objectives.
Yeah. Your enhancements, Craftworld Champion, you have OC5, which is one of the best ones you'll ever see on a character, so very solid. Ethereal Pathway, in the Deploy Armies step, select up to 2 Guardian units from your army. They have Infiltrators.
I mean, I'm not sure how I like that one. You don't have to be part of those 2 units, because you can only join 1. So, I mean, that part's good, but you can already have Rangers be that, although Rangers don't get the benefits of the objective. So I guess that's making your guardians kind of, or storm guardians might be good with infiltrate. I don't know. It's useful. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. Protector of the Paths. While the bear is leading a Dire Avengers or Guardians unit, once per battle, they can overwatch for 0 CP. And while resolving that, they hit on 5s, they hit on 4s if you are within range of an objective marker.
Yeah. You remember Asherman had this really cool ability? Yeah, that's the ability. Now it's here.
Now it's an enhancement for like an autarch.
Right, which is still really solid. And Dire Avengers have some really good guns still, so put them on an objective marker and overwatch to your heart's content.
Yep. And then Breath of Vol, while the bear is leading a Storm Guardians unit, each time you roll to determine the number of attacks made with a flamer equipped by model net unit, you can reroll the result. And each time you make a damage roll for a Guardian fusion gun, you can reroll the result.
I mean, that's solid. I mean, because you will have the fusion guns and the flamers in there because they can take mixed weapons in the Storm Guardian units.
Right. Strats, warding salvos, and you're shooting your fight phase. Select a Dire Avengers or Guardians unit. If the target's within range of one or more objective markers, re-roll the wound roll. You mentioned re-rolling wound rolls is good. Still good.
Yep. Still good.
Shield nodes. Select a Dire Avengers or Guardians unit that your opponent is targeting in the shooting or fight phase. Subtract 1 from the wound roll, which is really good because you are a squishy army.
I mean, toughness 3, so they'll now need 7s to be able to hit you on 3s as opposed to like 4s.
I'm trying to figure out they'll need 7s?
Strength 7 because
to wound you on 2s. Okay.
Right, because it would normally be 2s, now it'd be a 3.
So now it'd be 3, so yeah. But like even against stuff like bolters that are strength 4, now they're wounding you on 4s instead of 3s, right, which makes a big difference.
And the majority of the shots are going to be strength 4, 5, and 6 that you're going to see. So that's why this stratagem is really good.
Vol's Vengeance, in your opponent's shooting or fight phase just after an enemy unit destroys Dire Avengers or Guardians unit, select a Warwalker from your army. After that enemy unit is finished making its attacks, the Warwalker can shoot at it, but can only target that enemy unit. You can only use it once per battle round. That one seems very specific.
Yeah, very. I mean, you'll see that this is one of these synergy things of like, oh, well, we're going to have our Warwalkers team up with our Storm Guardians and Dire Avengers, and they'll synergize with each other. Oh, you killed some of them? Okay, well, I'm going to shoot you. So I can see it, but it's so situational.
It's so situational, and it also depends on what weapons you put on the Warwalkers, because like if they get killed by an infantry unit, I'm sorry, but most of my Warwalkers will probably be rocking double Bright Lances, and they're not going to do a whole lot to another infantry unit.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards scatter lasers might be good, but we'll get into that later.
Okay. Time to strike. In your movement phase, select a Storm Guardians unit that hasn't moved yet. They auto-advance 6 inches, and they can shoot and declare a charge.
So yeah, advance and charge and auto-advance 6. No notes. That's good.
And honestly, combined with the being able to infiltrate a couple of Guardians units, that might be a really good way to just get a first turn pounce on somebody.
True, but to be fair, Storm Guardians, although they're your air quote melee battle line unit, they're still not great at it compared to dedicated elite melee units.
True, fair. Blades of Asrian in your shooting phase. Select a Dire Avengers or Guardians unit that has not been selected to shoot yet. Their weapons gain pistol, which really only matters if you are engaged with someone. But if you are engaged with someone, you could make their day really bad, assuming they didn't just already kill you outright.
Right.
So very situational. Could be handy, very situational.
Well, to be fair, this one does not have the fall back and shoot. So this is, if you're stuck in, you're stuck in. True. This is how you make the best of it.
Right. And then cost of victory at the end of your opponent's fight phase, select a Guardians unit from your army. If your unit is not within engagement range, anywhere on the table, put it in strategic reserves, and when doing so, the unit basically gets reset. Return every destroyed model to the unit.
I mean, I actually kind of like this one. It's a new take on the Unending Swarm, where you just, as long as the unit's not dead, you replenish it. and put it somewhere else where you need it. So I think this could be useful.
It could be, yeah. And we're going to break there. We've got 5 more to cover. One's going to be more
and
of a
then
refresher.
all the data sheets.
And then all the data sheets, which we'll kind of have to speed run through, I imagine, but because this codex is not quite as big, but it's close to the Space Marine Codex and just the number of options.
And the fact that due to the army rule changing, it has changed a lot of units. And when we get into it, I think all but 3 I listed actually had some sort of change on them.
Yeah. Like now some of the changes are
very minor. Yeah.
They're minor stat changes, but a lot of them, it really does change how they play. So we're going to go ahead and take a break for sponsor identification. Also, remember, if you like our show and you want to help support us, there's a couple of good ways you can do that. One is to join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/preferred enemies. And you can become a member of the Preferred Frenemies, which gets you access to our Discord. You kind of get advance notice of things we're planning. You get to talk with us. We share projects with our patrons and just get to have a nice community going there. I'm also looking at releasing some patron-specific content, not podcast episodes will always still be free, but there's going to be some content specific stuff or patrons specific stuff that I've been working on for like our local narrative group that I'm going to release there in kind of a finalized format. So if you are interested in that, it's going to be some missions and stratagems from other sources updated to 10th edition. You might want to join us there if you're at all interested. Again, that's patreon.com/preferred enemies. It's a minimum of $1 a month. And basically our patrons help keep our show income neutral and help provide us, hopefully as we get more people on, provide us more funds to be able to do things like offset the cost of traveling to things like Las Vegas Open or the Grand Narrative in Atlanta. So we really appreciate all the support you give us. And if enough people put in $1, it adds up. A couple other things you can do, like and subscribe to our video version on YouTube. The YouTube versions come out a couple of days or so after the audio versions, just because it takes a little bit of time to get the editing and processing, the rendering of the videos done. And we break those into 2 parts so that there's more content on a regular basis. And we do know people are listening. People are even commenting and liking, which is awesome. So more of that, please. So you can find links to our YouTube, like on our Blue Sky or on our on our website. And then third is we do have a merch store, preferredenemies.com/merch, MERCH, where you can buy hats with the Preferred Enemy logo, shirts with Preferred Enemy logo. We even have a piece. I don't think I've really officially announced it before, but we also have a Commissar shirt and mug. Our Commissar shirt, which reads, and I quote, "You fucked up a perfectly good Commissar is what you did. Look at it. It's got anxiety." It may or may not feature Commissar Kane, with artwork provided by my partner Renee Barr from Ninja Monkey Studios. Definitely check that out if you're all interested. It's another way to support the show. I have the Preferred Enemies cap myself, and it's actually pretty good quality hat. I'm very happy with it. So, and we have it in both regular and distressed. We've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies. Like I said, we've got a coffee mug or tea, depending on what your hot drink of preference is. But another way you can help support the show. So whatever way you choose to do it, we really appreciate all the support you guys give us. So we'll take a sponsor break. When we come back, the rest of the detachments and all the data sheets that are changing for Codex Aeldari. See you in a bit.